Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello and welcome to the show. I was thinking today as I got up, here the new year really begins, and I'm not even talking about the Jewish New Year. You know, it's after Labor Day that our real lives start up again in earnest. The bus was crowded. There's more traffic. There's, just sort of, there's no escape anymore. The summer's gone. That's what, Anyway, hope you had a good weekend. And heaven knows there was a lot of news going on the weekend. My sister, by the way, is joining us later in the program. So I don't know. You know how loath I have been of late to talk about the serious stuff. But I suspect, knowing you as I do, that we need to pay some attention to Syria. I do have some other things I want to talk about. But listening to your takes on Syria, what we do, what we don't do, how the president is handling it. I mean, I have to admit, there's part of me that said, I listen to people who don't pay any attention to news generally, and they're all hot and bothered now about this. And they have very strong opinions. And I often think quietly, believe it or not, to myself, I wonder on what you are basing your opinion. I wonder what background information. I wonder what historical information. I wonder, how much thought you've given this. People who just immediately end up on one side or the other, I tend to discount. So those of you who are always against any kind of military intervention, I have trouble with you. And people who are always hot to trot and bomb everybody in sight, I got trouble with you. If you've listened to me over the decades, know that I think sometimes we are forced in many respects by our position in the world to take action. Also that sometimes that you have to make a statement, also whatever. But I also know when somebody's ginning up a bunch of nonsense to go to war. Thus, I have supported wars in the past, and I have been against wars in the past. I still think my record holds as I look what happened after the fact. I would still agree with I agreed we should do something in Afghanistan after 9/11, go after the Al-Qaeda, because that's where they were, and that was my sense of what we were doing. Obviously, it turned into something else. And Iraq, absolutely not. Syria is a very different thing, and we've been sort of watching this out of the corner of our eyes. Some of you maybe with a little more care than your peripheral vision. But I don't even know where to begin. I feel that, first of all, the president goofed in saying what he said, thus putting himself in a position to have to come through when he publicly said months ago that the use of chemical weapons in Syria would be a red line, and that had been crossed, and we would have to take some decisive action. It's unfortunate he said that, because once you say something and then you don't do what you say, it is true. Your credibility suffers. You start looking a little like a paper tiger, perhaps, somebody who, like a bad parent who says, if you do that once more, and then you don't do anything, right? So there is that. On the other hand, this is such a mucked up mess over there. There is no good side. It's not like, oh, the guys who are fighting Assad are, must be the good guys. Some of them are. And a lot of them aren't. It's a no-win. Can we say that right off the bat? This is a no-win no matter what we do. But I think the president's shocking statement over the weekend of throwing it into Congress's lap, I have to admit, when I first heard that, I laughed. I did. I laughed a wicked little laugh. Because it is so easy for those blowhards in Congress to constantly be saying, and here's what you should do, and here's what you should do, and here's what I would do. But they don't ever have to do anything. It's not their position. It's not their job. Well, the president's just thrown it back and said, you know what, this is your job, come to think of it. Tell me. You're the people's representative, so that now every one of them has to do what the president has to do. Make a choice, make a decision, and do it publicly. We've got a call. Go ahead, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
How you doing today?
I'm doing fine.
I say screw them.
Screw
them, let them go.
Screw
Don't
who?
get involved in any of this bullshit. They're not a NATO ally. Don't do anything.
Okay.
Let them fuck around and do what the hell they want in that place. I'm tired of this bullshit of going overseas, spending money, killing our people. If we start something, we'll be in there. I say screw them.
Okay.
I get tired of this bullshit. It's all it is a bunch of crap. Every time they kind of drum up something, I think this is a flavor of the month, too. I think next month will be North Korea. And as far as this chemical bullshit, we've got so many troubled areas in the different countries in the global area. We could pick anywhere to find people are getting killed for no reason at all. Why is this so goddamn important? Have a good day.
You too. I hear you. I completely hear you. I really do. It's very tempting to take a look at the entire Middle East and say, exactly, screw you. Just go away. Obviously, none of you know how to run a country. Just get lost. We cannot fix any of this. We got enough trouble back in our own backyard, which is true. The problem is that we're the big, bad United States of America. I'm sorry. We like to be number one, don't we? The very thought of becoming number two gets us so nervous we don't know what to do. But with being supposedly the leader of the free world, there are responsibilities that come with that. It's why a lot of people say China will never be a leader, even if it economically surpasses us, because it doesn't have that sense of actually trying to do the right thing. The United States is really, in some cases, does try to do the right thing. That is playing out here a little bit, this sense of chemical weapons. You've got to push back right away. The world has to push back right away and say, this we don't abide. Now, I talked about that last week. Why is that? Dead is dead. And I've read a lot. I've been trying to I don't have an answer myself. I don't have a position yet. I really don't. I really don't. Because I don't think whatever we do is going to make much difference. And I also think when Americans start squawking about starting another war in the Middle East, that's a little overwrought too. We're perfectly capable of bombing the bejeebers out of somebody, but never putting any of our people on the ground. And that's what our intent is here. The threat of American loss of life in this instance is pretty low. And it's not like we're declaring war on Syria. We're acting as the parent in the world and saying, you can't do that. And then we're going away, right? That's supposedly what this is going to be. I don't know. I'm not a geopolitical wizard. I know that tinderbox of the Middle East is particularly dry right now, and there are sparks flying all over the place. And if that, we can say screw them, but the fact is, if the conflagration spreads, if all of that spreads, and you have displaced, they say now there's over 1 million Syrians that are displaced. You have millions of people racing into neighboring countries, looking desperately for shelter, destabilizing all the surrounding countries, which are already destabilized to start with. Let's not forget Egypt. Let's not forget Iraq, which is heading or is in a civil war, just not acknowledged yet. All of this going on. And to suggest that doesn't have an impact on us is a little disingenuous. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I really don't. I thought there was an interesting piece in the Washington Post trying to explain why chemical weapons would be a red line, why there is something visceral that occurs in our reaction to that kind of killing. And understandably, it stems partially from World War I, where chemical weapons were first used en masse. And in fact, most of the deaths in World War I were done conventionally. Very few were really caused by the mustard gas that the Germans spewed. But people were simply appalled, and the nations of the world reacted in that way, and have again and again and again. And most nations of the world are signatories to a treaty that says that this is absolutely not to be done. Not to be done. I'm not sure Syria is a signatory. I know North Korea is not. The Chemical Weapons Convention of 1997 is, I think, the treaty that we're talking about. But the Washington Post said that Syria is a holdout and has not signed it, nor has North Korea. But Obama asks this. It's a good question. What's the purpose of the international system that we've built if a prohibition on the use of chemical weapons that has been agreed to by the governments of 98% of the world's people and approved overwhelmingly by the Congress of the United States is not enforced? It's a good question. There's a lot of talk about weakening America. What the president has done by asking Congress to sign off has weakened the presidency and weakened America. And if we don't act, it weakens America. And if we do act alone, it weakens America. All this, these are all judgment calls. And I'll go back to what my reaction was when the president threw it over to Capitol Hill. Ha! Each one of you blowhards, you make a choice. The problem is, of course, is he's thrown it over to the most dysfunctional, screwed up Congress in the history of the country. And I'm actually more interested in seeing if this screwed up Congress is actually capable of seriously debating this. It's been wonderful watching normally hawkish Republicans who were squawking and saying, the president hasn't done enough, the president hasn't done enough, and then he throws it back to them, and all of a sudden they're sort of, well, I'm not sure, and this is, and they're backing off. I love it. Running for cover. Lots of them. I don't know. Some guy who's written about this war of nerves, it's called, A History of Chemical Weapons, also argues that there might be something almost primitive in our reaction to chemical weapons because it is poison. And poison, by virtue of being an unseen agent of death, and clearly then seen as an unfair or not a proper way of killing. It's not gentlemanly. It's taken by cowards and weak people. Poison. Who knows? But there's sort of this visceral reaction to chemical death. Here's another question you can ponder. Lawrence Wilkerson, a guy who I think is a really smart character. He was an advisor to Secretary of State Colin Powell and a retired Army colonel. And he said about the Syrians, this is a truly heinous use of chemical weapons. But that said, North Korea's leaders have killed thousands, if not millions more, through starvation. Yet we did nothing substantive. Is it worse to die of hunger or gas? And this gets us back to the question I was asked. Dead is dead. Dead is dead. On the other, I don't know. And I'm always amused by how many people do know, made their decision, they're sure of it, and absolutely. I think these things are so not black and white, so confusing, so many layers of I don't have a clue. I will say that somewhere here in my gut, I feel that the president has not handled this very smoothly. Really hasn't. From his remark about the red line that got him into a corner, to his not wanting to get involved and then saying, well, we'll give some aid to the rebels, but really not much. This sort of like neither here nor there response. And I don't know, and here again, where this is often a problem with this White House, he doesn't explain. He doesn't tell people what it clearly enough, early enough, and often enough, why he's doing what he's doing, or why he's not doing what he's not doing. But I don't pretend to know. By the way, the president did not need, by law, Congress's action to do this. Some people had said that, he's gone back to, actually giving Congress what the Constitution gives Congress, which is the right to declare war. This is not war, right? What this is the law that is in play now in regard to how much the president can commit American troops without congressional approval is a law that is the War Powers Act, and it was enacted during President Nixon's, the latter days, I think, of President Nixon's term, and enacted over his veto. So actually a veto override created the War Powers Act. And here's what that says. And they still gave the president some leeway here. It requires a president to notify Congress within 48 hours of initiating military action. So Congress must be notified. And it bars the armed forces from fighting for more than 90 days without congressional approval. So, in other words, the Congress can sit by twiddling its thumbs, having been told that the president wants to take some action, and then it has 90 days to let the president do what he's done. And then they get... So there was more than enough... The War Powers Act would give the president more than enough time to do whatever it was he thought was the right thing to do without having Congress sign off on it. So everybody said this is a very risky political ploy the president has done. I don't know. I don't know. It is... I think it's funny. Ha ha. I don't know. So this is the world we live in, and we're the United States, and there's no getting away from that. And the rest of the world always sits there on its, on its hands, just as so many of us do, bystanders, and harps and squawks and screams. And if you do something, you're criticized. If you don't do something, you're criticized. I mean, this is... I love the president. I really do love the president giving each member of Congress a little feel, a little sense of what it is to be asked to make a choice in a situation where there is not a good choice to be made. I do appreciate that. Tell you what, I'll take a break. I've said what I'm going to say. If you guys want to say anything, feel free or write me. I'll check the emails. And then there is a lot of other stuff going on, and most of it lighter, it's true. It's hard. I don't know. I have to tell you one thing I did think of, too, in regard to this, and maybe I didn't, and then we'll go to the break. I often thought, and maybe I said this last week, that as a Jewish person, I thought, how could the world stand around and watch all these people running for their lives out of Germany and out of Austria and out of Poland and out of Holland and out of all these places, one step ahead of these terrifying Nazis, and not do anything. And the world did not do anything. All through the latter part of the 30s. I mean, they let people... didn't do a thing because it, well, and as a Jew, I often thought, why? How could they do that? And then I thought, well, because they weren't Jewish. I mean, the people who weren't acting. And they saw Jews running, and they thought, well, the Jews are running, yeah, so what else is new? It's not me. Those aren't my people. It's not my job. I don't have to do anything. Was that the right call? But now, when I see, okay, now it's Syrians running. And I think, I'm not Syrian. As a matter of fact, these guys are, they're not my friend. I know that. So screw them. What do I care? Don't think that that's not in your heads, too. That kind of, they ain't my people. But if it were your people, Would the calculation change? So I'm just saying there are a lot of questions that arise with this Syria issue. And a lot of them are moral. And they're not easily batted away. And it's not easy to come down on the right side. And so for those of you who easily find yourself someplace, I ask you more than any to question yourselves a little harder. That's all I'm saying. We'll be right back.
More is on the way with Lynn Cullen Live.
Les Ludwig, your independent, self-financed, clean candidate for mayor of Pittsburgh. You've heard the saying, same old. If we don't change what we're doing, we can only expect the same results. Let's look at what the Democratic Party leadership of your lifetime is asking you to do on Election Day. They want you to forget that they and Ravenstall have not lived up to minority contracts and the jobs involved in it. If government promises work and jobs and wants to leave it for the next candidate, will it ever get done? How can we trust Peduto and especially the leadership when they continue to act this way? Are they hiding something worse than Harper's misdeeds? Vote November 5th and remember, same old. Embrace change and work willingly with it. Think outside the party's box. Make Les Ludwig your mayor and join his march to clean government and keeping promises.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on gift cards from your favorite local restaurants, bars, museums, attractions, and shows. This week, 50% off tickets to the Pittsburgh Irish Festival. Supplies are limited. bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's best bargains. bergbargains.com.
Have a question or an opinion? Call Lynn Cullen at 412-316-3381 or email lynn@pghcitypaper.com. Now, more with Lynn Cullen Live.
Okie doke. Allison writes, all of these armchair quarterbacks telling the president what he should do in Syria and screaming that he needs to get congressional approval now have to put up or shut up. It's one thing to pontificate on cable and radio shows. It's another to cast a vote and be on record. The resolution the president sent to Congress was, in my opinion, bland because he knew they would change it. So whatever resolution that is voted on will be totally written by the Congress. I don't know whether the Republicans are going to take this opportunity to again weaken this president, but if they vote him down, they will also be weakening the United States in the process. That, along with voting against increasing the debt limit, will totally ruin this country internationally. And while it may reflect on President Obama, the Republicans will and should be blamed. It also, for those of you who just like watching politics, I do not. I turn away in horror and disgust. But I guess it will be interesting watching this wounded Republican Party and its hawks and isolationists and just Obama haters go at it. Some who are hawks who would definitely, for any Republican president, sign off on this in 2 seconds flat, can't do it because they think they just simply are incapable of saying yes to anything that Barack Obama asks for. One other thing. How many times have I said one other thing? About 20? One other thing about this, and this is pictorial. There was a picture, and it showed up in more than one paper, is a picture of the president on Saturday, I think, meeting with his national security advisors. And the picture's taken from behind the president. It's behind his head, and so you're looking down this long conference table, on both sides of which are the national security group. I'm looking. I mean, it's all the biggies. It's the vice president, and it's his national security advisor Susan Rice, and it's Defense Secretary Hagel and Secretary of State Kerry and Attorney General Holder, and on down the until. And what's what struck me about the picture is, and as I said, you're looking at the back of the president's head, and all of these people on both sides of the table he's obviously speaking, are looking at the president. So you're looking at these people, and they're deliberating, you can tell. How can I tell they're deliberating? Almost every one of them, the vast majority, has the same posture, and they're doing the same thing with their hand. And I'm wondering, for people who understand human behavior, it fascinates me. Almost everyone is like this. If you're looking now, and I'll describe it, they're like this. Their elbows are on the table, and their chins are resting on their hands, or in some cases, their hands are on the side of their head. But in most cases, one hand, is somewhere on their face. Now stop and think of that Rodin sculpture that everybody knows, The Thinker. Think of that pose. That's the same thing. What do you think that is? Why do you think, who's the kind of person that would figure that out? What science? Why so these are people listening and concentrating, and it's very serious. Why do you think that the animal that is us, when we're doing that, strikes that pose? Sort of fist under our chin, or index finger up by our temple, resting our head a little bit that way. But when we're mulling, why does our hand want to support in some way our head? Don't you think that's an interesting question? Well, I do. And I'm here to tell you, all down the line, Biden, Kerry, Holder, whoever that guy is after him, and then down the line on the other side, the only two that aren't doing that are Susan Rice and Chuck Hagel. Although they are, they're eyeballing the president, but both have their arms, Rice especially, very sort of expansively sitting with both her arms on her chair, which might bespeak a kind of, I don't know. But her body language is different than the others. Anyway, if you think people can't write a whole bunch of stuff about that, you'd be wrong, really. Okay, here's some folks who've finally written me. Ray has written, Lynn, the memory of World War I and the conventions, if prohibited gas that arise from it are in our collective unconscious. I still remember this poem that I came across in grade school. It's Wilfred Owen. Wilfred Owen was this handsome, young British poet who, like so many in his generation, went off to fight World War I and never came back. I believe, yes, he was killed. And he wrote this about gas. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of disappointed shells that dropped behind. Gas! Gas, quick, boys. An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time, but someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory, the old lie. Dulce et decorum est pro patria more. I'm sorry, and he ends it with Latin, which is something like there's nothing better than to die for your country. Now, Owen has painted a pretty damn fine picture in poetry there of the horror of a chemical death. And as I said, how sweet it is to die for one's country. Dulce et decorum est. Yeah. Why is John McCain, someone who knew the horror of war, always so eager to jump in? Ansel writes, I find it hard to believe that we don't have a super spy positioned in Syria who can't take out Assad with a single bullet to the head. In my opinion, that's all the U.S. needs to do. Ansel, I said the same thing last week. I said, hey, look, we got these drones. We don't need anybody there. These drones can pinpoint, as you know, if the only intelligence we need is where is Assad going to be. As soon as we can see him, take him out. But I think it was Chris Potter was here that day. We were sort of laughing at the fact that is that is against the law. That is against all international law to kill the guy who is really the cause of all this. It is not against the law, apparently, to bomb regular people. But we are not, by American law, allowed to assassinate leaders of other countries. Isn't that correct? It would be a violation of American law. Even though I agree that would be a neat little thing to do. Well, so, all right, I'm gonna, okay, I'm done. I'm done with Syria. I also just heard from my sister she's not gonna make it on today. And when we come back, let me get some of this other stuff off the table. Feel free, if you want, to address whatever issue you feel a need to. Okay? We'll be right back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Come to Little's for all of your back-to-school needs. Little's has everything for all ages to stay in style for this upcoming school season. Check out the large selection from Doc Marten, Steve Madden, UGG, Clarks, Lely Kelly, New Balance, and much, much more. Don't forget to come visit this season's colorful handbag selection as well. Little Shoes, Pittsburgh's largest family shoe store, 5850 Forbes Avenue in Squirrel Hill.
Oh!
You are round MVP.
Yeah, man. Yo, Drew, I finally got round MVP. Round MVP.
No way. That was some ownage.
Finally earning round MVP takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
Visit knowhowtogo.org to learn what you should be doing right now to prepare for college. Start taking the steps at knowhowtogo.org. Brought to you by the American Council on Education, Lumina Foundation, and the Ad Council.
This week's Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for the special back-to-school supplement. Plus, Mumford & Sons, Dave Chappelle, Fungus, and News of the Weird. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone with GPS-enabled listings at citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
All right, I don't know if you saw this. I don't think I saw it in the paper today, but Geraldo Rivera has been disinvited by Duquesne University. You know, Cyril Wecht has a big position there, the Wecht Institute, and it brings a lot of big people here for these conferences that have to do with forensic science. And apparently there was one coming up at the Wecht Institute at Duquesne University that was going to be looking in, yet again, to the Kennedy assassination. And as you know, Cyril Wecht played a role in questioning the single bullet theory. And Geraldo Rivera was there because I guess he first aired the Zapruder film. Here's what Duquesne University said. The administration felt that Mr. Rivera's decision to post a nearly naked picture of himself on social media was inappropriate and inconsistent with who we are as a Catholic university, and therefore asked the Wecht Institute to withdraw the invitation. We warn our students not to put anything inappropriate on social media because of potential consequences. You could consider this teaching by example. Well, you will not be surprised to hear that Geraldo has reacted in a fit of rage. As a Catholic university, Geraldo says, I hope the administration of Duquesne is as diligent in condemning real outrage as it has been in censoring my appearance on the JFK panel because of a nearly naked picture. Are all prospective speakers similarly scrutinized, or is it my sin receiving special attention? Does the selfie overweigh my Peabody, my Emmys, and other professional achievements in Duquesne's scale of morality? Are the students of Duquesne so sensitive and protected that they will be unable to concentrate on the topic being discussed because they cannot unsee the image? Further, the process of cancellation was incredibly rude. I was informed last week by a stranger who introduced himself to me at a hotel bar, only to then tell me that he was on the JFK panel, but that it was too bad my appearance had been canceled because of the offending tweet. With the Pirates in contention for the World Series for the first time in a generation, this act by another Pittsburgh institution was incredibly Bush League. I don't understand why you dragged the Pirates into this mess. Well, I want to say, here's another one where I don't want to take either side in this one. A pox on them both. I think Duquesne's being a little silly, and I think Geraldo is a total jerk. So I don't give a damn. I have an apology to make. I helped spread incorrect information last week. It did, I have to admit, strike me as being pretty amazing. But I'd gotten it out of a quote that was in an article in the Post-Gazette. And then much to my chagrin, I see that the Post-Gazette put a correction in and said this. In a story Friday about fast food workers not striking in Pittsburgh, a union leader called us to correct his statement to emphasize that he was talking about service employees at UPMC making less than $12 an hour. See, what I had said what? I said that some huge percentage, like 50% or something, of UPMC workers make less than $12 an hour. He had said something like that. But it wasn't it was UPMC service workers. And apparently he, who was quoted, failed to say that. On the other hand, the reporter should have said, what? Because that was my reaction too, but figuring they had vetted it, they didn't. So anyway, and then they included UPMC's statement. Comparing UPMC to employers that pay minimum wage is like comparing the Steelers to a Pop Warner Football League team. Well, somebody tell UPMC before this season is over, I think that might be the case. And also, speaking of corrections in papers, did you see this? Do any of you read the New York Times? Is that it? Yeah, the New York Times. They did a big story about the pirates, blah, 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 being great, yada, yada, yada. And then they talked about Justin Morneau being brought in from the Twins and how he was actually driven from the airport and arrived during a Saturday night's game, I believe. Yeah, Saturday night's game. And they say this. Morneau checking the score when his flight landed, listening to the broadcast in the car, and finally emerging through the Fort McHenry Tunnel, where he could see the lights from the sold-out stadium. Wait a minute. The Fort McHenry Tunnel? This is the New York Times. Where the hell? Where did that come from? No one would have said Fort McHenry. How does that get in there? The Fort McHenry Tunnel. Of course, it was the Fort Pitt Tunnel that he did come through. How do you come up with that? I mean, that's that. And I looked today for a correction, figuring that somebody in Pittsburgh would have called up the Times and said, what the hell are you guys talking? There's no Fort McHenry Tunnel. And I didn't see a correction. I did not see a correction to this egregious mistake in the New York Times, saying that Morneau came through the Fort McHenry Tunnel. Where's Fort McHenry, for God's sake? I think there is such a thing, but where is it? God. Oh, quick shout out to, Diana Nyad. Pretty unbelievably amazing. 64 years old, and she does something no one has ever done. I mean, an endurance and grit, 110-mile swim through shark-infested waters from Cuba to the United States. That really is. I'm sorry about this chair. Can you hear that? Every time I move. Oh, I'm sorry. This is funny. This is coming out of the disaster area known as the Middle East. And it's rare that you see anything coming out of that makes you laugh, really laugh, but this did. Cairo, Associated Press. A man in Egypt found a suspicious bird near his home. Now, just stop right there. How can a bird be suspicious? What constitutes a suspicious bird? Well, what constituted a suspicious bird of this guy is, first of all, he thought it was a swan, and swans don't normally come to his neighborhood, let alone a swan with something attached to its leg. And he thought, it's a spy swan. I'm telling you, the Egyptian people are on, they're down to their last nerve. It's a spy swan. And so he grabbed that bird and he brought it to the police. And the police put the bird behind bars. I have a picture here. I have a picture here of the bird in jail. The bird is in jail. You might say, that's no swan. That's what I said when I saw it, too. It's a stork. Anyway, once behind bars, the officers and the man puzzled over the electronic device attached to the suspected spy's leg. On Saturday, a veterinary committee called in by concerned government officials determined the device was not a bomb, nor a spying device. It was, of course, a wildlife tracker used by scientists to follow the movements of migratory birds. It says that people are so sure that everything is going to hell in Egypt that, they see a bird and they see a spy. Earlier this year, a security guard filed a police report after capturing a pigeon he said was carrying microfilm. And then a previous rumor a few years ago blamed a series of shark attacks along Egypt's Mediterranean coast on an Israeli plot. Yeah, those were definitely Israeli sharks, trained to attack nothing but Egyptians. In the bird's case, even military officials ultimately had to deny the bird carried any spying devices. Yet later, the state-run daily newspaper quoted one of the people from the military as saying that the incident showed the patriotism of the man who captured the bird. Anyway, it's a stork. It ain't a swan. And I sure hope they let that poor animal go. Good God. Idiots. PJ writes on Syria, watch out what you wish for. Take out Assad and really open the can of worms. That's the problem, as you initially stated. Oh, yeah. He was just showing people... and then on to Geraldo. He was just showing people Peabody, and if you don't want to see it, don't look into Al Capone's vault. Being very clever here. Go Bucks, it says. Okay. I, of course, went to the game. They got clobbered Sunday. But it's okay. That was fun, too. No, it wasn't. The most well, maybe not. I was going to say unbelievable story, but how could I say that? Was the story. At first, I thought it was like a joke. I thought it was somebody making an awful joke. But did you hear how that little roly-poly jerk in North Korea, Kim Jong Un, had his former girlfriend machine gunned to death? Yeah. You didn't, did you, Jess? No. Well, she was a rock and roller, and he grabbed her and 12 others, people in her band, and they lined them up and machine gunned them down. Jeez. No one can. Why would he do that? Now, his wife, the one he married, was also a singer. And maybe she used to be in that band? Did she used to be in the band? So this could be the wife saying, I don't like hearing. I mean, maybe he did it. It was like a little gift to his wife. These people are beyond belief. They not only gunned down all these people, machine gunned them to death who didn't know, hadn't done anything. But then apparently he ordered all of their families to be detained and probably sent off to some, labor camp where you're as good as dead anyway. And apparently he's also thrown out the old chief of the military, and God knows where that guy is now. What a... Yeah. Okay, there's the one who's dead on the bottom, and there's his wife on the top. Yeah, dead, gone. I wonder, Fort McHenry. Yeah, I thought so. That's in Baltimore. That's the Star-Spangled Banner. That's right. That's what I thought. Fort McHenry. I got so many. Why would they say the Fort McHenry Bridge? For God's sake, yes. Oh, sake. Oh, and I'm being told they do have a correction at the Times. And Ray's saying maybe it came from the nickname for our catcher, McHenry. Because they call him the Fort. Well, but that doesn't make him a bridge. Or a tunnel. And why? And we weren't talking about him. Jeez. Came through the Fort McHenry. Jeez. Okay, everybody's telling me, yes, Fort McHenry. I know that. I knew that. I'm embarrassed to say that I couldn't think of it at the moment. Okay. So, anyway, there you have it. Jeez. Oh, and a reminder. I know today's Tuesday. It's very confusing. This week's a very odd week. Because we didn't have a show yesterday. Then Susan wasn't here today. And then tomorrow is normally Potter. It will not be. Potter's moved to Fridays. Thursday, I won't be here. I will be celebrating the year 57. I never remember. If I had to write it on a check now and then, I would. It's the Jewish New Year. And I'll be doing my religious obligations. So I won't be here on Thursday. And one other thing. Okay, is anybody really tracking how often I've said that today? Because I think it would be funny. I'll try not to. Now that I'm aware of it, I will definitely try not to. There was a piece that I saw over the weekend that really, it is unconscionable. I don't know what possibly is the reason, but it's unconscionable. In the past 2 years, enrollment in the CHIP program, the state's CHIP program, Children's Health Insurance Program, which is to make sure that children are insured even if they're coming from poor families. Maybe where they make a little too much to be on Medicaid, but they still don't have insurance, so there's a CHIP program to at least make sure that children will have access. And in the past 2 years, which have not been great years economically, as we know, and more people have, in fact, fallen into poverty, the number of children enrolled in the state's program has declined by almost 8,000 children. Now, there has not been an increase in the Medicaid program, so whatever kids are not getting, they're not getting health insurance at all anywhere. No one can figure out what's happened to them. And in fact, when the Corbett administration came in, they, right off the bat, kicked 80,000 children off the Medicaid rolls that were getting insurance that way. So, hey, if anything, you would expect, without a doubt, a pretty big increase in children who are being put on the CHIP program. The Kaiser Family Foundation recently reported that during the last 2 years, most states saw gains in enrollment, and Pennsylvania was one of the few states to see a drop. The fact that there is a decline both in enrollment in the CHIP program and enrollment in Medicaid indicates the only thing you can figure is that it means tens of thousands, maybe even up to close to 100,000 Pennsylvania children who had health insurance now do not. You've heard of taking candy from babies? Taking candy from babies is seen as a nasty, nasty thing to do. But taking health care from babies? I don't know that I have words for that. But when you elect Republicans, this is the kind of government you get. Okay. Well, that be it. I think so. That was it. Bucks go for win 81 today in Milwaukee. What's the magic number? 83? I think 83 is the winning season.
Is it?
Yeah. It's going to happen this week. It's going to happen this week. There should be parades. And if you guys aren't into it, tough. And I do want to say this to Pitt. That was a real nice first quarter. It really was. I was proud of you. I really was. And then I couldn't look anymore. Okay, so there you have it. And see you guys tomorrow, I hope. Have a great one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.